the ramifications of the DFCs set by GMA 12 are already injuring NDOT and other landowners it represents, because based on the adopted DFCs in the Simsboro, there is no available water for production by applicants such as NDOT. Not only are landowners' rights being trampled on by reverse engineered DFCs, but local groundwater districts in GMA 12 seek to instill fear in the community by grossly mischaracterizing the aquifer's quality. For example, the general manager of one of the districts in GMA 12 is regularly quoted in local newspapers stating and alluding that his district is out of water, and that the aquifer will be harmed if water marketers are granted permits. First, these statements ignore the rights of landowners to benefit from groundwater, given the implicit message in the statement that water marketers, even those who are landowners, are not entitled to benefit from the groundwater beneath their land. And any landowners who lease groundwater rights to water marketers are not entitled to benefit either. Second, these statements are gross mischaracterizations, given that the Thornhill report evidences that there are millions of acre-feet in storage in the Simsboro. Third, the gross mischaracterizations are made to instill fear in the community and kill local support for future projects. With regard to the reasonable and prudent development of the state's groundwater resources factor, GMA 12 has wholly failed to address this factor, given that it gave no consideration to total available water supply, total recoverable supply, or sustainable yield when it established its DFC. In other words, the science was ignored and the DFCs were reverse engineered to be set at desired demand. Further, GMA 12 used the DFC process to kill the perfect solution to the water supply shortage in Central Texas. The I-35 corridor is in desperate need of water, and the aquifers in GMA 12 are a part of the solution to the water shortage in Central Texas. Yet, GMA 12 selected DFCs that will only allow for existing local use and projected future local use, but no additional production in the future, particularly for export for use in neighboring urban communities, such as those in the I-35 corridor. There is no better example of GMA 12's failure to consider the reasonable and prudent development of the state's groundwater resources than the NDOT project. NDOT entered into an agreement with the Guadalupe Blanco River Authority to export water from the Simsboro for use by GBRA members and other users in the I-35 corridor. The agreement was contingent upon NDOT obtaining permits from Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District. Lost Pines and GMA 12 as a whole closely followed the NDOT and GBRA projects and took purposeful steps to kill the deal. Steps such as protesting the funding granted by the Water Development Board to GBRA for the NDOT project, instituting a moratorium in Lost Pines Groundwater District that is still in existence today, and establishing DSCs that would ensure no additional permits would be granted from Lost Pines. Finally, with no hope in sight for NDOT to obtain permits, GBRA terminated its agreement with NDOT. Even though the economies in rural communities rely on and benefit from job creation and economic development associated with the water use, the districts in GMA 12 have used the DFC process to prevent the export of water out of the districts, effectively deciding that water should be preserved solely for local use. Suggesting that large urban communities, like those in the I-35 corridor, must rely on local resources is absurd. And local districts deciding that water should be preserved solely for local use is even more absurd. And is equivalent to Travis County deciding that Travis County jobs are only for Travis County residents. In sum, the DSCs established by GMA 12 are unreasonable. And I will turn the presentation over now to Mr. Thornhill, NDOT's hydrogeologist, who has been a geologist in this field for over 20 years, and he will discuss the specifics of GMA 12 DSCs and NDOT evidence that they are unreasonable.
GMA 12 and board members of all the various districts that are members of part of GMA 12. Good morning to you. I know you are looking forward to another water discussion. And I appreciate your interest, appreciate the opportunity to be here and to discuss what we see with respect to the whole desired future conditions MAG process that has been carried out over the last 5+ years. My name is Mike Thornhill, Michael R. Thornhill. I'm the president and founder of Thornhill Group, Inc. I go by Mike. I'm a hydrogeologist with 2 degrees in geology, specialized in hydrogeology. Started working in 1989 back in Texas for another consulting firm, and after 9 years at that firm, started my own firm. So as Stacy has said, I've been working in this field, specifically with these types of projects for the last 20 years. Much of that work has been done in the Simsboro, the Corrizo-Wilcox Aquifer, the Simsboro within your GMA, within GMA 12. I have with me Mike Keister, who is has a master's degree in hydrogeology, is one of my staff members, one of my project managers, has done much of the work on this project on behalf of NDOT. And if I miss something, we're going to ask, it's okay that Mike reminds me of something that I've missed. Is that okay with you guys? Okay. So, because it's real possible I'm getting older, forgetting things. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to just go over a brief summary of the DFCs. We're going to talk about the DFC objections. Now, Ms. Reese just outlined the 8 objections in the petition. We're going to focus primarily on 3 of those objections in our part of this presentation. Throughout the DFC process, we have attempted, we communicated with GMA 12 and various districts within the GMA what our concerns, what our objections are to this process, and how it is harmful not just to one client, but it is harmful to the entire state of Texas with respect to water planning, water availability, and water supplies for the citizens of Texas. Generally, our objections are the 3 that we'll focus on. The DFCs are vague, ambiguous, and arbitrary. The DFCs were settled on a process that is flawed. We call it reverse engineering. I know that some of you love that term. Call it BAP calculating, whatever. But these DFCs were reverse engineered, starting from the end and working back, which we believe is not a viable way to do it. The DFCs, we believe, are physically immeasurable, which is one of the requirements that they meet. And then at the end, we'll talk about a little bit the ramifications of this process and what it means to our client as well as to others in the GMA and across Texas. Briefly, here's a summary table. This is compiled from the various letters. I think the date is May 20. Well, different dates of letters from the different districts. I believe this was from the GMA's files on Post Oak Savannah's website. So we just compiled the numbers submitted by each district for their desired future conditions. And so simply that's what that is, a tabulation of the various aquifers covered by the Queen City Sparta GAM and the DFCs set forth by each district and agreed to in the GMA process. Obviously, for obvious reasons, we all focus more on these 2 aquifers, these 2 layers of the GAM, the Corrizo Aquifer, which correlates to layer 5, and the Simsboro, which correlates primarily to layer 7 in the central part of the GAM. One thing that Ms. Reese pointed out, I'm trying to remember I have this thing. This number, prior to being 237, was being tossed around at 285 feet. And in fact, this number, these are just a couple of examples. For the Corrizo Aquifer in Fayette County, there was an original number of 80 feet that was then reduced to 60 feet. Those are just two examples, and quite frankly, there was little or no documentation or reasons provided for those reductions in a drawdown for the DFC. So why were they reduced? We don't know. What difference does it make to the health of the aquifer? There's absolutely no discussion in any of the documentation that we've seen that describes how that will impact the health of the aquifer. In fact, I'm going to say that 40 feet or 30, what is it? What's 285 and 37? What's the number?
48 feet.
48 feet. 48 feet difference of average drawdown across a district would make no difference, especially when there's hundreds of feet of available drawdown, would make no difference in the health of the aquifer. So there's no justification for that provided by the districts. The other thing is how much water could be produced at the different level, at 285 versus 237 for that one, or at 80 feet versus 60 feet. How much difference in the amount of water pumped would that make to get to those points? We don't know. I think it's a lot. Again, these types of problems and these types of adjustments of the DFCs are certainly not unique to GMA 12. So this is not personal. It's not. I'm not mad at Joe Cooper. Okay. This is not. I'm not mad at Mr. Harnsberg. I'm not mad at John. Okay. Are we mad, John? No, we're not. This is not personal, but this is a severe and significant problem across the state of Texas. We've seen this same problem in GMA 11, GMA 13, GMA 7, and the GMAs around the Gulf Coast, whatever numbers those are, 14, 15, we've seen the same type of issue. And so it's a statewide problem, a process that needs to be fixed. Let's address the fact that these DFCs are vague and ambiguous and arbitrary. First of all, what we do know is that there were multiple, let's back up. Everybody knows that the DFCs were calculated based on model runs by the groundwater availability model, the GAMs, the Queen City Sparta GAM. So pumping numbers were put in, the models were run, and the calculations of drawdown spit out. And then the averages were done by taking the squares of the model that are within each district and averaging them. Okay? So that's how it's done. So we know, based on the numbering system of the GAM runs, that there were multiple well files created. We have seen 3. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes.
There is 4, excuse me. The original well file from the original GAM that was done kind of before this whole DFC thing started. And then there was 3B and 7A and 7B. So we're assuming that there were some other numbers in between the 3s and the 7s, but we haven't seen them. I don't know that they were made available or talked about in the processes that with the stakeholders. The final selected well file that was used for the DFC run, the GAM model whereby the DFC was decided was GMA 12-7B.